Assalamu alaikum and welcome, and thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Beyond the Mat. I'm your host, Brother Calvin Muhammad, and I'm really excited about today's conversation. And again, I'd like to always explain, for those of you all, if it's your first time tuning in to Beyond the Mat, this was inspired and directed by the national trainer of the Nation of Islam, Grandmaster Abdul Aziz Muhammad, who was inspired by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan as the national trainer. And a conversation that I had with Brother Abdul Aziz Muhammad, some of you know him as Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad, was that instead of, like we did for the past 26 years, we have our national training once a year. But he said he wants to make sure that the national training community and our community in general stays plugged into what is taking place. And a lot of times I've found, even though we've held the national training for 26 years, that some people think that we get there and it's just martial artists and we on the mat, which inspired the namesake of this conversation, which is called Beyond the Mat. It is to give you all a greater idea on what happens at the national training every single year. And you'd be surprised to know that the majority of the national training takes place off the mat, which brings me to today's conversation. If you see the smile on my face, you know, I always have an opportunity to have a dialogue with some dynamic individual. Well, today's conversation is going to be akin to watching an Avengers movie because we have a dynamic duo today, a beautiful couple in the Nation of Islam that inspires me. And whenever you see them, they bring light to the room. They're hailing out of Texas in the Dallas area right now. And I am joined by none other than our sister Ciara, and our brother Ameer. Assalamu alaikum, family. Welcome to Beyond the Mat. Man, really, I want to thank you all for taking time out, and for the listening and watching audience. This beautiful couple did an incredible presentation that we're going to talk about today at the National Training event for 2021. But before we get into that, you know, we were just having a dialogue before we actually started rolling. And Brother Ameer, you were saying, where are you originally from?
I'm originally from California, California.
Compton, California. That's where you were born and pretty much raised, right?
Yes, sir.
And when did you get to Texas?
I came to Texas in July 2007.
July of 2000. What brought you to Texas?
I came out on a football scholarship to Texas A&M Commerce, and then just never went back.
Oh, okay, all right. Football scholarship and never went back. That was enough West Coast for you, right? Sister Ciara, are you originally from here in Texas or?
No, sir. I'm originally from Illinois, East St. Louis, Illinois.
East St. Louis. Oh, well, I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, so I know about St. Louis. And ain't that, don't they call that East Boogie or? So I definitely appreciate that. And then you came in 2007 with our brother?
No, I came much before then. My mom is from Texas, so we came here to be with family when I was in junior high. And then further down the road in 2007, I actually met him because we went to the same school.
Oh, praise be to Allah. Now, were you both born in the Nation of Islam? Or?
You want to go first?
You can go first.
No, sir, I wasn't.
You weren't? Okay. And brother Ameer, I know you were, right?
Yes, sir.
As a matter of fact, your father, I've been in the Nation of Islam since my very young age, about 13 years old. And I had always been inspired by your father as a young man. At that time, they were called the National Security Team. And your father, along with some of that crew, of course, Brother Sadiq, and you had now formerly Brother Rodney, but a lot of that crew as young men, we styled ourselves after them. So definitely know the stock that you come from. It's always been an honor to talk to you and have you all on the program. And so, you know,
one of the that's why she had to go.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I know you all are serious about family, and so I know you. How many children do you all have?
We have 5, alhamdulillah, and one on the way, another little girl, baby girl on the way.
Praise be to Allah.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what I'm talking about. You're going to build that kingdom one way or the other. That's what I'm talking about. Praise be to Allah. Now, I've had an opportunity to meet your beautiful children as well. And so they are definitely pleasant to be around.
Oh, man. Alhamdulillah.
You know, which brings me to this year, the national training. You all did an absolutely incredible presentation this year at the national training. Can you tell me, well, first of all, for the listening and the watching audience, what was the title of that training?
Preparedness drills.
Preparedness drills. And what inspired that training? Tell us a little bit about what inspired that training.
Well, I would have to say, my thought process is always centered around the children as far as, you know, my involvement with the nation, or I think it's just kind of intrinsic, again, because I have so many children. And so in the discussion of the National Training Conference, and just in light of everything that was going on, and it was really inspired by the topic or the subject of the National Training Conference being preparation in a time of trouble. And so, you know, there's a lot of aspects of that preparation, but I think a lot of times, again, I'm an advocate for the children, we don't really include them in that process. And so that was ultimately the inspiration, because that has to be the center of the process. You know, we can't forget that. That's such an important part. You know, we can stock and we can, you know, do so many things to prepare to get ready, but the psychology of the family is the center of all preparedness. And so, again, that was pretty much the inspiration.
You know, you made a very, very important point when you talk about, you know, for instance, the national training or any type of training. Something for a long time, the training was very heavily brother-centered. And then I think it was a conversation that I had with Mama Aziza, Sister Judith Muhammad, who had mentioned why Grandmaster Abdul Muhammad really pushed her and the sisters to train. And she made a very valid point. She said that because sometimes the man who's looked at as the protector is not with the woman 24/7. And so if we leave all the training and protection up to him, then what happened when that woman is alone? And then to take it further, as you just pointed out, sometimes, especially in this world, not only are we not always with our children, but more likely than not, when something happens, it is more than likely that our children may be with us, whether that be a natural disaster, whether that be some type of crisis in the home. So if I could ask you, if you don't mind elaborating, when you talk about training the children, and before we get into some of the exact drills that you have, when you think about the importance of the children training in a time of crisis or something like that, for you, especially in putting together the drills that you have, what were some of the scenarios that you were thinking about that you wanted to make sure your entire family was prepared for?
Yes, sir. I think that, honestly, I look at our entire day as a drill. And I know that may sound different, and I'll explain, I'll contextualize it. So with so many children, and just in general in this world, you know, moving around with them is not something that I can leave up to chance. I can't leave any variables not mentioned. I can't leave any scenarios out of their minds. And so before we go into the store, they know, they get a speech, they get their expectations, they get a layout of their movement. Before we exit our home, they know, again, they get expectations, they get layout of their movement. It's constant repetition, and that repetition is really a drill. And so the reason why I said that our daily activity is really in the form of drills is because their expectations, again, are laid out repetitiously, whether it's chores or their lessons or just any type of movement or any type of scenario that will make us more vulnerable. Even if we're sitting in a car, they have to have, me personally, I believe that they need expectations for whatever scenarios that may arise sitting in a car. We once had, we were sitting at a gas station and waiting for my husband to come out the gas station. And in the transition time, someone opens our back door and is going to get into the car. It was really a mistake. She thought it was her car. This was many years ago, but that was a light bulb moment for me where we need to be making sure we lock the door when he gets out the car. That's an important thing. I think a lot of times we don't really consider just the possibility of everything go wrong. And so I would say that is a prime example. Another example, again, transitioning from the car, transitioning through the store. I just don't leave any of those things to chance. And especially now during coronavirus, like that is a different level of security, because not only are we dealing with physical threats, but we're dealing with a biohazard. That's a different type of threat. And so before, the expectation of the store, of course, is to have some type of formation, but now it's a type of formation and an expectation of the location of their hands, the expectation of the location or position of their bodies. Like, we don't want them to be bending down too much. You might touch the floor. We don't want to touch the floor. So I don't know if I fully answered your question, but those are some things that definitely inspired it. And it just really happened naturally out of necessity.
Wow. That's very powerful. It brought to mind, and I'm reflecting back when I was a child, which you got to take a minute to go back that far. But I can remember being a child and being out with my mother in particular. Before we went over, say, a relative's home or something like that, we would get a speech, but that speech was in general on how not to embarrass my mother. It wasn't necessarily safety, but we got the don't you ask for nothing to eat. More importantly, remember where you put your shoes, because I was the little boy. I always had one shoe when it was time to leave. So we got those type of conversations, but we never got, in a sense, the alertness. And I can recall being at a department store with my mother, and as a child, department store is like a big playland. And so I remember initiating a game of hide and seek, but my mother wasn't aware, and I remember hiding one of the clothes racks. I bring that up because when we're talking about preparation drills leading into the presentation that you all did, the first step, I'm assuming, is you have to make sure that you establish the mindset of your children to receive that type of information. What steps do you all take to help put your children in the mindset so that they can switch into a serious mode to receive that information? Or is that important at that time? Or how do you do that with your children?
Well, I would say that, and I actually learned how to start it by two things. One, just looking at Brother Celeritis, how he teaches children. One day he was teaching, and I remember he told them, like, he was teaching rising block, and he was telling them, imagine you grabbing an apple. And I was like, man, that's that's really wise how you do that, and the patience that he had, because sometimes with my children, but when I first started teaching them, say VSK, my patience, or I was looking for perfection instead of just planting the seeds and allow them to work it. So once I learned that, and I think my, work being an educator for the past 10 years, you really don't, it's not about, like, when you prepare the students for a standardized test, if you put the pressure on that you're learning for a test, it kind of makes them more nervous. So as she was saying earlier, just a simple preparation information prepares them for the, seriousness of it. So I'm saying that to say, going on family walks. And when I was little, my father used to tell me, when I would fall asleep in the passenger side, that the passenger is the navigator, and your job is to keep the driver woke and alert. So he would tell me, he would point out different things as we were driving and ask me, did I see this? Did I see that? So as Ciara and I were talking about it, as we would take walks, I just start pointing things out, like, do you see that? Who sees a red car? And, children love to play I Spy, but as adults, we don't correlate that into the training and preparing them for a time. If you give the child a frantic, because see, if we don't prepare the child in times of seriousness, and we may be panicking now, everybody is panicking, but if they're prepared from a casual, I guess, learning environment, then when it's time to snap on, they're used to the routine. So it's just like business as usual. So in a different time, you will tell them, just like, in the video, when they've been in a tornado watch before, and whereas we had to all get in the garage, but the bathroom, but they never had roles to play in that preparation. In, I think it was February, when we had the winter storm, they went through that, and because of different preparations, they just cut on, and they were able to respond and not panic. We lost electricity for hours at a time, days at a time. We had to eat, as you would say, a struggle meal. And they were appreciative because, again, their mind was prepared in times that wasn't so dire, so we could be successful. So the mindset is important, but the training of the mindset has to come in a way where they see it's a game, or I don't want to say it's a game, where they can have fun with learning. Like, you gotta have fun while you learn. And I say that sometimes as the older you get, your dynamics of what fun is changes, so you have fun learning. So when we train martial arts, that's fun, because that's what our mind has shifted to be enjoyable for us, where some people may see that as a chore or not fun, So knowing children like to play, now just making that play constructive or conducive for the household will allow you, when it's time to be serious and you say, yo, check, boom, they come. So like, to this day, if I'm screaming right now, they sleep. They may come staggerly, but they're gonna come because it's so implemented in them that they come to check in. And also, we try to I don't want to say parallel, but mirror the training that we get from the Nation of Islam, because we have to prepare our babies to help our people and help our nation. So the word check, when we're on post and something happens at the check post, you say check. So it's an alertness that they're familiar with, but it's not in the same atmosphere. So when my son joins, inshallah, the FOI, and he hears that, it's going to correlate back to us preparing them when they were younger, just as I do, correlate things that my father put into me when I was young, and I may not understood or even rebelled at things, but it's not about recognizing the relevance, I guess, at the young age, but it's about the seed being planted. Because you may know, I don't know any plant or fruit or vegetable that you put a seed in the ground and it just sprouts right up and ready to go. So that's the same thing when we're teaching our children. And that's one thing that I've learned from you, Brother Solaritis, and of course our teacher, Grandmaster Abdul Aziz, that what he's looking for may not be what I think he's, I was nervous about testing, and Solaritis told me one day, he said, man, when the teacher tells you it's time to test, he knows you're going to be prepared for what he's looking for. So don't worry about it. I'm like, nah, man, I don't. So I'm saying that to say it's the same thing with teaching our children. Sometimes we force compliance or force we look for it to be right and exact instead of planting that seed and letting it grow. And I know, like yourself, sometimes he'll teach us or tell us something, and we'll come back in our time of finally realizing it. He'll just giggle and say, yes. So you get it, So just mirroring that, somebody called, I don't know if this is relevant, but somebody, no, I'm not gonna, I'll share that often.
But along the same lines of what you just mentioned, can you give an idea of the type of drills that you all put your family through, and the purpose of it? What is the purpose of those particular drills?
Do you want prerequisite things or them in their fullness?
Give me what you got.
Right. I just wanted to pick up on a part of what he said and mention the games. So from the time they were very little, the drills are not a serious tone. They're a serious matter done in a light tone. So, because again, we're dealing with the psychology of an insecure time. And so we don't want panic in an insecure time. We want peace. We want understanding. We want readiness. We want a mental alertness. We want a security to overtake them. And so from the time, the oldest were very little, when we would walk anywhere, if we went for family walks, they would have to be in the Ali train. And so the Ali train gave them a formation. It gave them different parameters. Like they knew that the Ali train had to stay on the tracks, and the tracks was a sidewalk. They knew that there were a couple ways that the Ali train could form, and that would be with me either in the back or me either in the front, and it would serve different purposes based on what we were doing, whether it was crossing the street or there's something sketchy up ahead, or there's someone behind us, so I'm going to drop behind us because I don't want you being between me and them, or whatever it may be. And so those games, like he mentioned, it was Mommy Says. So Mommy Says started the alertness. Mommy says, and it wouldn't be a continual game. It would be a game of Mommy Says within the Ali train. So they would know the Ali train expectations, but then it will be mommy says stop. That's an important skill. So mommy says stop, so they're stopping. You know, mommy says, you know, grab a sibling. They're grabbing a sibling. They think it's funny. Mommy says tickle a sibling, because now that's really funny, but it still is the same concept of pairing up. And so those things turned into bigger formations and bigger responsibilities as they got older. So, you know, that went from different formations of Ali train to now, because of my children's age, my son can be the leader to cross the street. You know, my daughter can be aware of shoes being untied or whatever it may be and call our attention to that so that we all come to a halt. Or there's just different scenarios. So the question you asked though was the specific drills. So my husband mentioned the tornado drill. I believe 2018, we were under a bad tornado watch, and it hit the area really. It didn't hit our area, but there were a lot of communities that were devastated, and it just so happened to be on my oldest daughter's birthday. So that really imprinted in her mind and in their minds, because it went from being, you know, a day of celebration and levity to a very serious tone. And now we're having to transition again to the bathroom and to prepare. And in those moments, when you see the panic, when you see the uncertainty, and you know the conversations that have to take place to just give them security, you know. So of course I'm giving them words, you know, I'm telling them that Allah is our friend and that we don't have anything to worry about. Again, because I'm dealing with younger children, we don't have anything to worry about. If you're afraid, just pray to Allah and he'll protect us. So that would calm them. And then ultimately, when it didn't get bad, it would make them grateful and be more secure in whatever we're doing. So the tornado drill is one. Walking through our community is a big drill that we utilize. Leaving them in the car is a drill. They have very specific instructions. They have very specific parameters. And that's something that's very important, because you never know that circumstance that might require them to have to stay in and to cover down for everyone that's in the car. So there's a certain line of authority. You know, our oldest naturally is the first line of authority. And then it goes from there, just based on assignments, based on proximities, based on availability, but they all know the expectation. And then it's just reaffirmed by us. If, again, the older ones are the authority figure, then we are the support, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Brother Ameer, you mentioned before when you said, if you say check and you use that language, what is the expectation and the purpose behind if you say check, and what you want your children to do, and what is the reasoning behind it?
Well, when I say check, they all come and fall in ranks. You know, they'll stand, and it's amazing how they'll fall in oldest to youngest. I didn't put them in that order. They just do that sometimes, most of the time. But Ciara and I were talking that it has to be something. If we have to go, we have to go. Like, we can't be calling everyone's name, and we can't be screaming. Like, you just never know the time that you don't have or do have. So we needed something to command their attention right now, to stop everything, to not play, not talk, not, I'm coming, like, to drop everything and get here right now. And as we were discussing words, that's when, as I said, that is something that we already have as our people in our culture as an attention getter. So why not build on that to, again, familiarize them with our language and our culture. So it's just in you to be alert that way. Another thing that I have the oldest do is a perimeter check when we go to sleep. So he checks all of the doors and checks all of the locks to make everything is locked, make sure everything is locked down, just for his awareness. And it's gotten to the point to where now he'll just come to the front door, look out, and just survey the surroundings just on the, and I have to tell him like chill sometimes, like you don't have to be on right now. It's just because it was something that he want. When children are young, they want to be a part of what it is you have going on. So it's all about just finding involvement for them, and that was something that, as look, I'm doing this, do this. Is the door locked? Boom. Then it just escalated to, is anybody outside? So now it's just in his brain to check that way. So that was the idea of where the check came from, just ultimately having to command everyone's attention without question. Because before, if we call them, they'll come casually. Like they break their, I don't want to say they break their neck, but they hustle when they hear check, regardless if it's a good check, bad check, a bounce check.
Right, they know to drop everything they're doing.
They know. So
they know.
That was the intention behind that. And it didn't take long to establish that either.
You know, this is very, very powerful in the sense of, as I was stating before, Sister Ciara, we had to grow to understand that it serves a purpose, but it doesn't complete a purpose to just train the brothers. And even it doesn't complete that purpose if you just train the brothers and the sisters. But when you are training your entire family, when you're preparing them for drills, you know, I unfortunately was in a fire when I was very young. My sister and my older sister and myself were at home, and my grandfather was along with us, who was paralyzed, and we unfortunately lost him in that fire. But if we would have had the opportunity, if we knew what to do in those certain areas, maybe there would have been something that we could do. And so when you are out and about and you see brothers and sisters and you see people with their children, or sometimes I'm sure you may have heard this conversation that maybe this a little too much. Maybe you're being a little rigid, or maybe just to let the children be the children. What do you say when you hear mindsets like that to help people understand the seriousness of why you all are taking this so serious and why everybody should?
Well, I would like to say that I don't believe I've had any negative interaction about the drills and about their movement at all. I've actually had really positive experiences. So there was once we were walking through our community and people get used to seeing us, you know, because I'm going to take them out for walks. They need their vitamin D, they need their exercise, they need to burn off their energy because they don't need to have it in my house. And so the combination of all those things, I've literally had people stop us and say, y'all look so organized. That is just amazing. It is amazing how together the children look. That is amazing how y'all move as a unit. And, you know.
And the crazy part would be just on them, like, get here, move here, get here. And they'll stop us like, hey, man, that's, you know, it didn't look like we wanted it to look. However, what the public saw was the organization.
That's
one thing I wanted to say is I was with GM one time and I was telling him, you know, I wanted to learn how to, one of the reasons I wanted to learn the art was to protect my family. And he said the best way to protect your family is to teach them how to protect themselves. He said, because you're here with me right now, what if something happened? How you can learn all of what I teach you, but how can you protect them when you're right here with me? And from that day on, I took on the mindset of that I have to find a way to prepare them to protect themselves. And it's not necessarily just fighting. It's so much more than fighting. It's the organization, it's the security mindset of things, because man, you know, children are getting snatched, women is getting snatched, men are getting snatched.
Yes, sir.
So if they're not aware of that, then they'll be gullible. And we have heard people say, you know, let children be children and don't ruin it for the children. But how many children were ruined by some of those things that you're saying don't ruin it for the children? So, for instance, the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus, you know, and Christmas, they say,
Yeah,
well,
those are the ones we've heard.
don't ruin it for the children. But what happens is when we grow up learning about those fairy tales, and when it's time for your parents to give you good advice, you don't really, your subconscious don't believe them, because you're the same person that told me the Easter Bunny was real, and the bunny don't have eggs. So as much as you love your parents, the mind is so powerful, and in that spirit of this is what I want to do can overshadow what you should do, because then you're using that to validate that. So, you know, to counteract that, we don't deprive our children. If somebody wants to buy them a gift for one of those days, we're not extreme about it, but we explain to them what it is and why it is, and then we let them have it, because that ruining something for them that is made to ruin them is like an oxymoron, right? Like, this is made to set you off course. So by us, like, protecting our babies is the number one concern of a parent. So that's our approach, and it wouldn't work without the team effort, and with us, you know, conversating. That's, I don't know. That's conversing about these said events or these said accusations of depriving them of stuff or being too hard on them. We just keep in mind, you know, their emotions and their feelings, because so much society doesn't treat children like people. They treat them like children. And a child has, as we were told when we were young, a child has a child's place and an adult has an adult's place, but the child place still deserves reverence and respect, you know, and that's what helps. I don't know the answer, but I believe that that's what's going to help us save our babies, man, you know, as a nation.
That's a, you know, you make an important point. One of the things I think we forget about the mind of children, for instance, as a young man, when I was in the junior FOI, all I wanted to be was an FOI. I wanted to do what the older brothers did. I wanted to be able to respond to Allahu Akbar. I wanted to do what the more mature brothers were doing. And so one of the things that we forget about children is that all children desire to be older. All children really can't wait to be adults. And so we underestimate what children want sometimes. We think that, you know, even I spent, before I came into the Nation of Islam, you know, of course, my family was really out there, and so we would mock the adults in whatever behavior they were doing. We mocked it because we wanted to be like them, and that brings me to this question. So if I have, you know, it's me and my wife, and if we had our young children, and we came to you all, and we heard that you prepare your family like this, and we wanted to start to prepare our family like this, what would be priority one for you to help us? What is the first thing you would advise us to work on? Is there a particular drill that you feel your children and your family has to have first? What will be your initial advice? How would you prioritize the information that you gave us?
I would honestly just say calling them to attention and then doing some type of very simple drill. So you don't have to start with something that has a lot of steps and a lot of expectations. So something as simple as just getting in the car efficiently, that's a safety precaution. So, and that's something that you do often. So it's not like you have to go out the way to do it. So you have to go out the way to do a fire drill or a tornado drill or, you know, any type of natural disaster. Those are extras. And of course, that's the goal. But going to the car is something you're going to do anyways. So I probably would just start there because it's intrinsic and it's simple. And again, it's about efficiency. I know there's a lot of frustration. I mean, I've experienced frustration with getting my children in the car. But again, with repetition and setting those expectations and the foundation of really just having check, having them following procedures really made it a lot easier. I mean, it's just like everything can go back to VSK. You know, we do these techniques, which are drills. We're doing these techniques to have natural body responses to things. So it becomes second nature. We don't have to think about it much. Our body will just begin to be programmed to respond to different physical stimuli. So going to the car, it's the same thing. You know, you get to a point where, of course, as adults, we kind of coast to going to the car. We don't have to really think about getting our keys and putting our shoes on and putting a coat on if it's a cold day. Those are just things that we're going to do. But as children, they don't have that same foresight unless you give it to them. So it's very repetitive, very, I'm going to say now, delegated things that take place to make it more efficient. And again, it would just be that. It would be the car and finding a way or how whatever works for your family to command their attention. Those two things would be a basis.
Like beating a timer, you know, let's see how fast we can do this today. And you set the timer, like now that's a game, but again, it's something that they don't realize you're really doing it. If we gotta go and we're like, hey, it's time for car, whatever you call it, and boom, everybody moves in. And also, I would recommend if you have multiple children, just issuing out a responsibility for the movement. So like Amir, we used to say Amir is the captain for the brothers and Aziza is the captain for the sisters. So Aziza is responsible for getting the girls' shoes. Amir is responsible for getting the boys' shoes. And then because Amir is the oldest, he's responsible for everybody being ready to go. Not everybody. He's not responsible for them being ready, but to look to see, yes, everybody has shoes on. Everybody has this on. All right, Mom, we're ready. All right, Dad, we're ready. So it's just giving that empowering them to take ownership in that. I would recommend just giving small tasks to that couple wanting to start drills with them, and also just as little as you may think the drill is, it really goes a long way. Or as big or severe of event that you're trying to prepare them for, you can break it down simple. So like when GM does a technique, boom, he'll do something and bam. And he say, wait, hold on. He'll backtrack it. All right, just do this now. Just put him in an arm bar where he just threw him in I'm losing right now. He may have initially put a throw on them. Why can't I think of a Koda Gaesh? He may have gave him Koda Gaesh, but he sees the crowd and they can't do it. So he'll just give you an arm bar to put him down. The same entry, the same result is the person is on the ground in a lot of pain, but he just did it in a way that now it's on your level of expertise. So I would recommend whatever great you may be on the West Coast and have earthquakes, you know. What does it look like? What is the initial thing that you want done? Now, how can every member of your family take ownership? Then how can I introduce it in a way that it doesn't make them panic and say, oh man, the world is over, we're about to die? Because I know when I was young, that would give me anxiety hearing about the world about to be over. Like, dang, I'm 15, man. I still want to, you know. So making it real for them, but also allow them, as Ciara said, that Allah is our comforter and our protector. And we have these steps to prepare because he is that. We have food because Minister Farrakhan told us to store food in the house, but we got to be mindful of. I had to tell my son that you could drink water, son, because he started rationing his water at the beginning of COVID because we were saved. I mean, we were, you know, building the water. So he was Daddy, I only drunk. I'm like, nah, it's not time yet, son. Drink water. Like, he's like, I'm not gonna eat today. No, sir, you 10 years old, eat. Like, but he was being prepared too at the time when it has to go to the rations that he can versus the knee jerk. No, don't drink all the water. Like,
and it's not to say though that those things won't happen. Like I will say, when you introduce certain drills, the children, just depending on their temperament, will receive them and panic a little bit. But again, just reiterating that we're doing right now everything that we can so that when it happens, our family is in the best situation that we can be in. And so just reiterating that point, my middle child in particular, she was very, very distraught every time we would talk about the tornado drill, and it would frighten her. And I would just reiterate that to her every time. Well, we're doing this so that when it happens, we make sure we know that we have our water. We know that we have some snacks. We know that we have safety precautions set up so that when we exit the bathroom, taking your shoes, for example, so that when we exit the bathroom, our feet are secure, they're safe. We won't be stepping on broken glass or, you know, just telling her the function of those things and reiterating to her that we're doing it to protect ourselves. Eventually, she came to me when we weren't even doing drills. We weren't talking about tornadoes. We weren't doing anything. I was sitting on the couch. She came to me and she said, you know, I'm really thankful that we're doing this because I feel now that if we had to do it, it would be okay. And so when she said that to me that day, I felt relieved. And ever since then, she hasn't really responded in that same manner. Like she hasn't been scared anymore doing the drill. She's ready to do the drill. So, you know, just a word of encouragement. And also I want to say, if I don't say anything else, you can't expect it to be perfect. It's children. You're not seeking perfection. You're just seeking repetition. And when that time comes, unfortunately, we just had a very crazy happening in our family. And that same middle child who was scared about the tornado drill was burned by some hot butter on her arm. But the preparedness was already in her mind and in the minds of the children. So when that happened, everybody had a function. Everybody moved out to do certain things. They came to report it to us so that we could respond. She knew what to do. She knew her first aid measures. So she immediately went straight in a line to go to the bathroom to run water on her burn because she knew that was the protocol. And so, you know, just to see that happen, and in that serious moment, it was perfect. There was no play. There was no, nothing was deviated from. They followed it to a T. And again, because the time dictated that it be perfection. So if it weren't for the drills, I'm pretty sure there would have been panic. And of course there was pain. So in that pain, that could have produced so much. But because of the preparedness, because of the expectations of what to do and how to handle it, and even just the ability to stay calm in those moments and to have them have the mind of needing to be calm to lean on each other, because if they were panicking while she's going through this pain, then inevitably she's going to also panic. But instead, my baby soothed herself, and she was singing to Allah, and she kept singing to herself that Allah was her friend and that he was going to help her get past that pain. And so it was, of course, it was very, bad. You don't want those things to happen, but it was beautiful that they were able to respond in that manner, and that she immediately jumped to doing what she knew to do, which really helped with her healing. She's most of the way healed, and it was a pretty bad area on her arm that was burned.
That is beautiful. It's beautiful to have that mindset of a child to respond. And I was listening to you talk, Sister Ciara, and yourself, Brother Ameer. You had mentioned something when you were talking earlier. I believe you were referring to your oldest son, and you said so that he's watching, he's making sure everything you stopped and you backtracked. And you said, well, he's just checking, just kind of overseeing. And I was curious, when you phrased it like that, do you, in the drills that you all provide, is it your goal to make sure that every child is able to function independently versus having, maybe one child who's like a caretaker over all? Or I was curious when you made that statement.
I would say absolutely. They all have their roles, but there's also, 3-year-old hasn't mastered finding things, or knowing exactly where her jacket is at all times. So in that case, it would be best to have, a responsible person in place to be able to assist her. Again, the goal is to have it be most efficient. So in that same spirit of having to get up and go, I mean, as simple as this is, it's little accommodations. I bought them all Crocs because they don't have shoestrings. They're all able to put that shoe on their foot, and it's a pretty secure shoe so that, it's not flopping everywhere. They can still run. They're still able to move efficiently. And I know this is not the conversation. This by any means not an advertisement, but that little, accommodation allowed for more independence. So we definitely push for independence, but there's just certain areas where we need someone to be able to cover down, especially because there's a lot of them. And then as parents, of course, we're thinking of getting them ready. We have to get us ready, but there are also other things that need to happen. There are materials that need to be secured and grabbed. And, if we're evacuating the house, there's certain things that we have to do that is outside of them. So knowing that they're able to at least secure themselves, of course, is the goal. And definitely to make them as independent as possible is the goal. But we also have some measures to make sure that, all the children are together.
Very powerful. As we wrap up, first and foremost, I want to say to everybody listening and watching, man, if you did not have an opportunity to see the presentation that they put together with their entire family, and you got a chance to see what they're saying put into action, it was beautiful. In my opinion, it's something that every family should teach and train their children. As Sister Ciara was talking about when she was talking about some of the specific drills, when you send your child to a public school, and Brother Ameer, you're an educator, they don't necessarily say, well, the children in this bill, they're too young to learn the fire drill. They too young to learn the tornado drill. And now they're too young to learn about active shooters. If they're in the building, they have to teach them an appropriate response in those time frames. And so I really appreciate what you all have offered and what you all have given and what you continue to do. And so in wrapping up, do you all have anything that you do on a regular basis, or do you offer any information to families to kind of to kind of give them the type of training? Do you do anything where you do certain drills, then you make them available to the community? Is that something that you all do?
I do have a resource or like a reference sheet that sets the foundation for implementing drills into your home. And it's done in an acronym. And the question is, do you care to prepare? And so each letter in care represents a portion of any type of drill. So it's universal to be able to apply it to any scenario that you see fit in your family that may need some measures, that may need security measures, that may need certain procedures to go along with. So I do have that. I don't know how you would want me to get that to you so that
Well, I tell you what, if do you post it online or anything like that, or how do you distribute?
I haven't. I just made it for the National Training Conference, so it actually hasn't been released outside of that. But
Absolutely.
I don't really.
What we can do is we'll display it, and we'll make that available, because I think that's a critical tool to have. We'll make sure that the viewers that are listening and watching, as a matter of fact, as they're listening and watching right now, they're probably looking at it on the screen. So we'll definitely make sure that information is available. And I want to say to everybody listening and watching, make sure you stay connected to this couple. Make sure you stay in tune with the national training, because they have a lot of information to give, and really they are a great example of how we should be preparing. As Sister Ciara talked about in the beginning, she talked about the theme of the national training, preparation in a time of trouble. And we are in a heck of a time right now. And this is something that you do not want to take for granted. And I had to say, especially as we're receiving guidance from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who even from the beginning of this pandemic, the information, the guidance that he is inspired, he's given us, inspired by Allah, has saved countless lives. And so you want to make sure that you stay plugged in. Any closing remarks, family?
Also, Tuesdays and Thursdays with GM and Soke, we all get on as a family because it's one thing, you know, for me to teach them, but as again, I try to model GM as much as I can, and he takes us to his teacher. So I take my children and my wife to our teacher as well. So I would encourage the family to get on, and what better way to be trained from a national trainer and Grandmaster Abdul Aziz as a family. And it really brings you together as a family, and it makes them more prepared to, you know, it keeps them active, because again, child obesity is sweeping the nation, not the nation, but the world right now. So it gets them active. Again, it's the family. That's one thing. I did want to say too, to your comment about them being individuals, like we're all individuals, but we have a structure and responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a post, you come with that responsibility. So you may be a student officer and you have certain expectations, but at home, you're still Brother Ameer and Brother Calvin, and I have to take care of that. But as a student officer, I might have to call 10 or 15 brothers. I might have to be at base at before other people. So again, as I said, the check is just preparing them for them when it's their time to enlist in the Army. And I was telling my wife, you know, sometimes what happens is we want our children to be soldiers fast. But just like in any military, you only got so many active years of duty before you retire.
Yes,
so
sir.
I make the babies soldier hard at the age of 7 to 15. He's like, man, I want to go play now. But unfortunately, this is the time in his life where he doesn't no longer need to play 20 and 21. But because I never let him play when he was young, now he's going to take the time when he should be enlisting to go play. So it's very important that they're able to go for themselves doing those things as an individual, but again, just mirroring, because we mistaken the Nation of Islam just for an organization and just for our city and our location, but it's nation and it's universal. So how can I prepare my children to help the world if I don't implant the seeds that they're going to recognize when they're older? So that's our approach in trying to raise our children, just preparing them for one, to help society, to help the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, but not to have to go through some of the trials and tribulations that we went through to realize that's what we need to do, by making it fun for them as a child and making it in a way that they have ownership to their nation. Because again, GM, as from a child, he said, yo, I've never seen myself outside of helping the nation. And that stuck with me, because I'm like, man, how do I now do that to my children? Because it has to be a way for the world not to get us. And we have to fight in an intelligent way, in an intelligent mind, because we're the smartest people on the planet, as we proclaim. So this problem should be easily solved with our babies, but not easily in the sense of arrogance, but easily when we really give thought to our science, a wicked scientist that's after our babies. So we have to take the same interest that the enemy of our babies takes in taking our babies from us. We have to have that same interest in keeping our babies with us. But I don't know the right word, but what I'm trying to say is getting their minds involved in it, or even wanting to be, you know, what it is we desire for. Because
just having them engaged, having them be a part, including their voices. Again, I'm a big advocate for children, and even outside of, you know, the preparedness drills, just in general, where he's saying we want them to enlist. You know, we want them to be registered members of the Nation of Islam. But I think a lot of times, as he mentioned earlier, we treat them like second-rate citizens. You know, they're not treated like people who will one day become adults. And so when you don't treat a person about or how or in the manner of where they're going, I mean, if you don't treat anything where it's going, then there are going to be deficiencies when they get there. So you will teach a child to speak when spoken to. Well, does that quality just automatically dissipate when they're old enough, or are there still programmings in their minds that prevents them from speaking out as an adult when they should speak out? So, and I'm just using that as a narrow example, but we have to include their thought processes. We have to include their minds when we seek to teach them, or when we seek to have them around. Like, I think a lot of times they're just foot and toe, but they can't just be foot and toe. They have to be involved, and they have to be, you were saying that the things had to be fun for them, but I think a better word than fun is relatable to them, because it's not all about joy and entertainment. It's just about seeing themselves in it. And so when you're able to break it down in such a way where now they want to do it because it feels like a part of them, then there's never that kickback. And it could be something as simple as, again, empowering them to have roles in the drills. It could be something as simple as explaining to them on another pathway, explaining to them the meaning of the greetings and the significance of the greetings, and why we give the greetings instead of using alternative greetings like hi or bye or whatever it may be, and how that greeting that you're giving a person is a prayer and how you receive blessings for it. So it just switches the mentality to, now I'm adopting this because I want you to have blessings. I want you to go in peace. I know what peace is. I know what peace looks like. I know what peace feels like because it's been defined to me. So I want that for you too. And so that's with everything. So if we make everything relatable to them and involve them in it, I mean, it's the simplest solution, because if we think back to when we were children and the rebellion that was in us and the kickback that we would have, it would be because our minds were not included in the process. We didn't have enough understanding of what it is that we were being asked to do, to actually do it and make it our own, if that makes sense. And I don't know if I went off too far with that one, but
Absolutely. You know, you both make very valid points in a dilemma that we face. And it's not just in the Nation of Islam. It seems to be common when you're talking about succession. And I say that because I reflect on my time in the Nation of Islam growing up, right? And when I was growing up as a young man, as a boy, really in the Nation of Islam, there were I came from a situation where I'm a very young man, and my parents weren't in the Nation of Islam. I gravitated towards the nation on my own. I had an older cousin, but I was attracted to the Nation of Islam as a boy. And what drove me to really, really be engaged is because the mosque that I came up in made me feel like if I didn't come to the mosque was going to fall apart, right? They literally made me feel like that. Although all my duty was to just handle the recording of the lecture or to help the secretary out take inventory of the products, or it was very small things. But in my mind, I felt like, you know, if I came home from school, if I didn't feel like going to the mosque, but I was like, I gotta go because who's gonna record? Or I gotta go because who's gonna help the secretary? Or I gotta go because the captain said that is, I'm assigned to the post to help walk the. I'm thinking to myself, if I don't come, the sister's just gonna be sitting outside in their cars. They're not gonna be able to make their own way to the door, you know. So, but to your point, I felt like as a young man that there was an absolute need for me to be there. And as you all were saying, as Sister Ciara was just pointing out, that you have to include them. Now, if they felt like they didn't even, if I knew I was just coming to the mosque and they was gonna stick me in the back or sit me here or sit me there, then I might have been less motivated because I'm like, I can go or not gonna go. Meeting's still gonna go on, you know. But it was because it was created in me to have. They put in me like, you're a vital part of this operation. Like if you don't come and if you don't get that checklist and help the secretary, how they gonna open up and pray? How they you know, that in my mind, that was my thinking, right? Until I grew to the point where you know, I started to find other reasons, which was the spiritual aspect to come to the mosque. And I say all that to say that we are giving our children, and I'll wrap up on this, we're giving our children supreme wisdom. We're teaching them to be gods at a young age. And so we're teaching them their responsibility. We're teaching them their possibility. We're teaching them their capability. At some point, we have to provide a yard by which they can work that out. And if we don't provide it, they're going to seek it on their own, right? And it doesn't mean that they're not righteous. They're actually doing what we taught them to do, but we just haven't prepared the succession, right? and so we'll often find in our children, even if they don't follow in the path of the Nation of Islam, and I've seen this before, where young children were prepared very strong, but we didn't have the world in place that we told them would be in place by the time they got of age. And so they took that supreme wisdom, and they was the same in the gangster disciples. They was literally displaying supreme wisdom in the gangster disciple. All the leadership we taught them, everything, or selling drugs, everything we taught them to be, how to work and, endear people to them and everything, but it was just in the wrong field because we hadn't prepared a field to hand over to them. And so I say that because that's a critical part of what we have to do in order to retain our children, because if we don't, they're going to become, and in the Art of War, there's a section in the Art of War when it talks about the 9 grounds of battle. And one of those grounds is called on deadly ground. And what that ground is typically describing when you've constantly taught and trained soldiers to defend the homeland. You've constantly taught and trained soldiers to fight in order to protect what it is that we've built. And if all they know is fighting, and you don't provide them a war, they'll start to fight each other, right? Because that's all they know, right? And so that's the same with any discipline. If you don't provide them the thing that you're preparing them for, then they'll find it somewhere. But they can't find it where you haven't provided. And so I just wanted to leave on that because you make very valid points, and I hope that everybody got something out of that. And I think that was an appropriate segue when we're talking about drills and preparation in the time of trouble. If we're talking about preparation and we're talking about training our family, ultimately we got to talk about the ultimate preparation, which is the wiseness of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad in him building the Nation of Islam. He never, ever, ever, ever tried to build a mosque without building a school, because that was an open admission to it's going to end when these people in here are no longer there, right? And so if you're building a school as well, that means that we're training this to live on, and it will never die because we're constantly training a new generation. And so I appreciate you all. What a pleasant note to end on. Man, I thank and love you all for your spirit and all that you have had. And I really am looking forward to you all providing more and more information in the national trainings coming up. And for those listening and watching, if you have not subscribed to the official Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad's YouTube page, and if you're not following him on Facebook at Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad, and you're not following us on Facebook at NOINTC and Instagram on NOINTC, please stay tuned to us. Brother Ameer, Sister Ciara, may Allah bless you all, your beautiful family, and the new one. May Allah bless that new one. Once they come into the world, we're looking forward to opening and enlarging our family more. Thank you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.